I'm just going to go like this. And then you can just advance for me. I'm not touching it. All right. Okay. In the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him. This is the angel that's speaking, okay? The first time I read this, I was like, oh, that's Daniel. No, this is the angel. Now then, I tell you the truth, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all the others. When he has gained power by his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. Then a mighty king will arise, who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. After he has arisen, his empire will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 winds of heaven. It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the power he exercised, because his empire will be uprooted and given to others. Okay, so we're about to cover a lot of history. Are you ready? So Daniel is reading the prophet Jeremiah, right? And he is in the middle of fasting, and he has been presented this vision. So the angel has arrived, and Daniel knows that they're somewhere near the end of the captivity, right? And so he's about to get this revelation, and it's not going well. Israel's going to take about 50 years before they get Jerusalem rebuilt. They got to get the wall rebuilt, the temple rebuilt, and so Daniel's struggling with this idea, right? This is not going well. So I'm sorry, we've been terrible. We deserve everything you gave us, but could you be with us? And that TLDR stands for too long didn't read. Basically, chastening of Israel will continue all the way through history. So Daniel's about to get the revelation, and it is not going to be the happy, like, hey, welcome back to Jerusalem, everything is fine now. In fact, it's going to be a lot worse than that. It is going to be, a lot of things. Okay, so let's talk about these 4 kings. So Cambyses, the son of Cyrus, is the king. And Pseudo-Smerdis, this is an interesting little story, so I'll pause for just a second to tell it to you. Smerdis is actually the brother, I think, of Cambyses. No, the son of Cambyses. And at any rate, his father assassinates him, or his brother. I can't remember which one it is. At any rate, he assassinates him, but he does it in secret. So this guy who looks a lot like him, they're calling him Pseudo-Smerdis, he arrives and he's like, oh, hey, y'all, I'm Smerdis. And so he becomes king for about 2 months. And then meanwhile, everybody knows that he's not the king, right? Cambyses is like, he's not the king. But somehow or another, Cambyses manages to cut himself, get infected, and die. So he's gone. So he killed this guy to secure his kingship, and yet just died. And so Darius arrives, and he's like, hold on. And he takes care of things. So he and some co-conspirators, about 2 months later, they go in and they clear out the Pseudo-Smerdis. And so they set up a monarchy. Now, that's where Darius is, okay? So Darius is going to be on the scene for a while, and then Xerxes is going to arrive. So that's that 4th king, very rich. You'll remember him from the book of Esther, right? This is a lot of stuff going on. This is when Haman tries to eradicate the Jews. So again, more of that. This is not going well for the Jews. The Jews are in this place where everybody wants them dead. Now, you'll also remember, Xerxes is a lot of stuff's going on here, and there's some famous stuff, the Battle of Thermopylae. This is where the Greeks try to defend and do an amazing job. It was immortalized in the movie 300. They keep that pass open, but some guy runs around the back of the pass and teaches the Persians where it is, and so they actually lose the battle. They're mad, right? The Greeks are mad about this, but it takes about 150 years before who arrives on the scene? Alexander, okay? So Alexander the Great. You'll remember him from history. He is, I think he starts at 23, and by 33, he has captured the entire known world. So he just swept across the known world and did amazing things. And interestingly, the Bible dedicates exactly 1 verse to Alexander the Great. I always thought that was kind of interesting, right? So one of these guys that humans think is amazing. I mean, we call him the Great after all. And yet, God is like, okay, he's a footnote. really. I mean, he did some interesting things, but I'm telling you in advance that he's going to do the interesting things, but really, it's not very interesting. So, he is going to lose his kingdom, and he actually had a half-brother who is retarded, and an illegitimate son, and a baby that was basically born after Alexander died. So the story goes that Alexander was in, I can't remember what country, but basically the last country that he defeated, and then he's lamenting that there are no more countries and partying, and then gets a fever and dies. So his generals, Cassander, Lycamus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy, they all conspire and kill his half-brother, his illegitimate son, and that baby. And so they divide up his kingdom. Now, this kingdom, the history calls this the Diadochus. I've got it written down somewhere as we get further. There you go. The Diadochi. So you'll see the part there in yellow is the big one. That's actually Seleucus. And so he has what is, now modern Turkey, Syria, and everything. I didn't get my pointer out, but if you will, this is Jerusalem, right, up here. So interestingly, they chose blue as the other color to help, which is not very helpful because there's some water up in here. But the blue stuff is actually Ptolemy. So that's Egypt, and so you'll notice that the yellow is kind of cut in half by some of this, and so the kings of the north and the south. So Ptolemy is the king of the south, and Seleucus is the king of the north, and they are going to fight over Israel and the Holy Land a lot for a long time. So the king of the south will become strong, but one of his commanders will become even stronger than he and will rule his own kingdom with great power. After some years, they will become allies. The daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to make an alliance, but she will not retain her power, and he and his power will not last. In those days, she will be betrayed, together with her royal escort and her father and the one who supported her. One from her family line will arise to take her place. He will attack the forces of the king of the north and enter his fortress. He will fight against them and be victorious. Okay. This is an interesting little thing in history. So, the Ptolemies, right? So you'll see them referred to as the king of the south. And remember, this is a lot of history. So this is all the Ptolemies, and then this is all the Seleucuses. Seleuci. Yeah, the Seleucids. Oh, the Seleucids, there it is. And so we're going to go through not very many of these, but we're going to focus on a couple. So as it turns out, the Ptolemy, Philadelphus, is trying to make an alliance. And so he says to the king of the north, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you take my daughter and, we'll be friends. And so, as it happens in the ancient times, the king of the north is like, all right, that sounds like a great idea. One problem, he's already married. Well, but he's king, so it's no big deal. I'll just take the wife that I have, I'll put her away, and then I'll get this nice new young wife, and voila, everything is going to be good. As you might imagine, his current wife did not like the plan. And she kills Bernice, all of her attendants, and her husband. And she's like, that's not how this is going to go down. So the whole alliance falls apart, right? Just like God said it would. And so I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit of the story, so I left that one in there for you. But again, we're going to skip verses 8 through 20. It's a soap opera. There is all sorts of stuff going on. The king of the north gets strong, the king of the south gets strong, they go back and forth, and it happens year over year. I listened to one guy, his name was Skip, something or another, and he said there were 135 prophecies in the first 35 verses of Daniel 11, and they were verifiable and fulfilled. I could not find a list of the 135. So I'm gonna have to write Skip, I guess, and ask him, like, could you tell me what the 135 are? But the thing that I stood in awe of was, even if you can't figure out what 135 of those prophecies are, I can tell you, just in that story I just told you, right, there's many prophecies that are actually getting fulfilled. And I think it's absolutely staggering that God is in advance telling you what's going to happen. And then it happens. None of us are surprised, right? But it is one of those things that tells us God is omniscient. He is outside of time. He knows what's going to happen. It is by design. All these kings are there because he put them there. All this stuff that's happening is because he wants it to happen. Now, I say that carefully because there's some, like, I'm pretty sure that God wasn't like, hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to kill, like, this person. But I think that this stuff that's happening all through history is in the hand and plan of God, okay? Okay. Here we go. He will be, so I'm skipping ahead, right? We're going to verse 21. He will be succeeded by a contemptible person who has not been given the honor of royalty. Now, this is Antiochus Epiphanes, okay? So we've skipped ahead about seven kings, and this is Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, you've heard Garth go through this in chapter 9 or 8. I can't remember where it was. But anyway, we've talked about him before, and you'll remember this whole interlude with Antiochus Epiphanes is actually immortalized in Jewish history with, of course, Hanukkah, okay? Because, like, everything that happens, that's the story behind Hanukkah. He will invade the kingdom. When its people feel secure, he will seize it through intrigue. Then an overwhelming army will be swept away before him. Both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. After coming to an agreement with him, he will act deceitfully, and with only a few people, he will rise to power. When the richest provinces feel secure, he will invade them and will achieve what neither his fathers nor his forefathers did. He will distribute plunder, loot, and wealth among his followers. He will plot the overthrow of fortresses, but only for a time. Okay, so Antiochus Epiphanes, how would you like to be described in the Bible as a vile person? Like, that's unfortunate. But in essence, he was an illegitimate king, and he seized the throne, okay? And you can see it here. He was actually the brother of Philopator, and the actual heir is Demetrius I. Now, Demetrius I, as it happens, was a hostage in Rome. Because in ancient times, that's what they used to do, right? Like, they'd keep control of you by taking your kids and bringing them to the palace, and then sometimes you even exchange children, and then in theory, you wouldn't come and invade each other because your kids were there, right? So that was the hostage situation. Well, Demetrius is in Rome as a hostage, right? And Antiochus Epiphanes sees the opportunity, and he basically seizes control and becomes the king. Now, he called himself a really long name that I can't pronounce well, but loosely translated means God Most Glorious Manifest. So he had a really high opinion of himself. The Jews, of course, took that and made a pun out of it, and they called him Antiochus Epiphanes, the Mad One, which I thought was pretty funny. Now, he moves against the king of Egypt, right? And the south was sick of Antiochus, and so they went to Rome, and they were like, hey, Rome, can you help? Now, Rome is the rising power at this time, and so Rome is like, yeah, sure, we can help. So they send ships. Well, they defeat him in battle, and the story goes that he's literally standing on the beach, and the Romans are like, go home. And he, of course, is like, no, I don't need to go home. And the Romans are like, yeah, you're going home. So they draw a circle in the sand, and they say, your answer before you leave this circle. So basically, they publicly humiliate him and, in essence, make it so that he has to leave. And so he is mad as a hornet. And what does he do? He rolls through the Holy Land. And rolling through the Holy Land, he does a whole pile of crazy things. So he starts off and puts soldiers in the temple area. He then forbids people to worship and to sacrifice. He sends soldiers through Jerusalem, killing babies, women, and then he actually built a statue of Zeus, erected an altar on top of the current altar, sacrificed a pig, spread the pigness all over the place, right? In essence, desecrating the temple and making the Jews mad as hornets. And then he actually, I thought this was an interesting way to say it, he made nudity public. So he took, the Roman thing was, at the time, they had the games and whatnot, and so the athletes were often naked. So he actually put the games on in view of the temple. So the Jews were they hated this guy. He was a terrible, terrible, terrible person. And so we continue with Daniel. With a large army, he will stir up strength and courage against the king of the south. The king of the south will wage war with a large and very powerful army, but he will not be able to stand because of the plots devised against him. Those who eat from the king's provisions will try to destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall in battle. The two kings, with their heart bent on evil, will sit at the same table and lie to each other, but to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time. The king of the north will return to his own country with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the Holy Covenant. He will take action against it and then return to his own country. At the appointed time, he will invade the south again, but this time the outcome will be different from what it was before. Ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Okay, that's Rome, right? We just talked about that. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. His armed forces will rise up and desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. When they fall, they will receive little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble so that they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. So, this is terrible news. Like, if I'm Daniel, I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, what's a guy got to do to get, like, some good news around here? And it's not coming, just FYI. But it is good news, because what God is telling him here in verse 35, right, is that the wise, some will stumble, but they will be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. So this bad stuff is happening, but I'm still in control. Everything's still going to happen just the way I said it was. Okay, now this is where things get interesting. You ready? Buckle up. Okay, so verse 36, the king will do as he pleases. Now, we're switching around here. So if you remember we're going to come back to that. If you remember in Daniel 9, right, 77s are decreed for your people in your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring everlasting righteousness. And then it goes on to say, know and understand, from the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. Now, if you remember, Chris showed you the video, right? And it was super fun because, in essence, this has been translated by many people to be 7 sets of 7 years, okay? So when you do the math, it's actually fascinating because, whoa, lo and behold, it took 49 years for them to rebuild the temple, the wall, in Jerusalem, right? And then it took 62 sevens, and then Jesus arrived on the scene, right? He died for our sins. In fact, they've actually done the calculations down to the day. So Jesus rode in on a donkey on that day for the preparation for the Passover. So he rode into Jerusalem as the sacrifice to the day. So Daniel had like all this in. So what's that leave us with? After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and have nothing. In the war will continue until the end. The desolations have been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. Okay? So this is the interesting part, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So we're going back to Daniel 1. The king will do as he pleases. Okay? Now, if you go and you look forward in in chapter 12, Gabriel is talking, okay? And he says, at that time we're dealing with, Michael will stand up. Now remember, Michael's an archangel, and he says, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, there will be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. So, when you're looking at the context of what this whole thing in chapter 12, the angel's saying, so there's going to be the second coming, right? Everybody's going to rise up. Well, that hadn't happened yet. Okay, so when we're talking about this, the king will do as he pleases. He's not talking about the king of the north or the south. He's talking about the king that's coming in that 1 week, or in that one period of 7 sevens. Okay, so he will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until a time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. Okay, so Daniel continues, he will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but he will exalt himself above them all. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortress with the help of foreign god and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle. The king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land. Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans, Cushites in submission. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tents between the seas, the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. All right, so who is this? Well, we've already talked about it, right? It's the Antichrist. And there are some really interesting things if you start looking around and ask what people think about the Antichrist. As you might imagine, there are some really sketchy stories floating around. I'll mention one. So verse 37, a lot of people think that the Antichrist will either be celibate or gay, based on this, right? He will not have a desire for women. I lean toward the celibate camp, but they've got this whole idea of the Catholic Church is the Antichrist because they're celibate, and the Pope thinks that he is basically the mouthpiece of God on earth and is therefore not, or he's infallible, basically. So there's a lot of stuff about the Catholic Church being the Antichrist. The one commentator I listened to actually had an interesting aside, because you remember in Daniel 2, there's the vision of the statue. And in the vision of the statue, what happens is the rock comes in, pow, kills off the statue, right? And then what's left is the feet of iron and clay. So if you look at that, Rome is actually kind of like part of the equation somehow. We don't know how. But interestingly, if you look at a map of the ancient world, what happens is you can see Rome becomes the east and the west, right? And the west fizzles out. The east actually moves to Constantinople, now Istanbul. So excited to get to say that. And so now Rome continues for about another 1,000 years. If you look at the map of what happens, 60% of what Rome had is now under Islamic control. And so there are some who believe that Islam is going to become the Antichrist. Now, again, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. It's an interesting aside, and I tell it to you because one of the most interesting thing about Islam is by their very own holy books, they are bent on destroying Jerusalem, right? I mean, it is their stated goal. So I've got to say, if your stated goal is to destroy Jerusalem, I got a Bible full of stuff that would say that the Jews are God's favorite people. So I don't think he's going to take too kindly to that. So at any rate, I'm going to stop and not say that I believe that those things are true, but there's a bunch of crazy stuff. So instead of that, I think what we're going to do is I'm not going to have nearly enough time to read you everything I wanted to. But basically, Jesus talks about this, right? He talks about the end times. And what does Jesus say about the end times? Basically, it's going to happen. There's going to be wars, rumors of wars. There's going to be people who come and claim to be the Messiah, and a whole bunch of crazy stuff is going to happen. And if it is possible, even the elect will be fooled. But Jesus says, but all this is going to happen, and they're actually going to shorten the time. There, verse 22, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. And so Jesus describes a time coming that is very, very, very awful. And he says, like, it's going to be so awful, don't even go back to the house and grab your stuff. Like, just go to the mountains, right? And so I believe that Jesus is referring to what Daniel talked about in that last set of sevens. So remember, Jesus in that 62 set of sevens was the 483 years, and then Jesus arrived. And then there's some amount of time in there, and then there is the end times. That's that last set of sevens. And so Jesus is talking about that last set of sevens. Now, the interesting thing there is in verse 31, he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. And then what happens, right? We win. Like that's what happens is we win. And so, oh, dang it. I just don't have enough time. So in 2 Thessalonians, again, it's the same sort of description. This is what's going to happen here in the end times. The Antichrist is going to come, the secret power of lawlessness. People are going to be fooled. God is going to give those people over to their delusions and, in fact, strengthen the delusion. So I personally want to be on the side that doesn't get the delusion. And then in the end, Revelation 19, I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and wages war. So Jesus came to Jerusalem on a donkey, right? And was the sacrifice. He comes back on a horse. So in ancient times, symbolism for the horse was, of course, war. So Jesus is coming back to do war, and he will destroy the Antichrist. So everyone comes, and we are raised, and then Jesus defeats the Antichrist. So that's the message I want to leave you with. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what's in the seven sevens. I have no idea, and I think people will tell you things that you'll listen to them and you go, "Oh, that seems like kind of credible." But at the end of the day, if it mattered, God would have made it clear. And what really matters is that we win, and everything in the Bible points to we win. And Daniel was very upset by this vision, but in the end, he was comforted by the fact that we win. So I leave you with that message. Thank you for your attention. Next week, we'll finish up with 12. Garth will finish up with 12. I was like, what are you pointing at me for? I'm not doing it. So 12 is going to be next week. So thank you guys for your attention, and see you next week.